Last week, I did an episode on ADHD and the MAOA gene mutation. When I released this episode, I told y'all that this was the gene mutation that was connected to ADHD and it was going to be a great episode. Well, it was a great episode, but as I was collecting the data for the episode, I realized that I had forgotten about another gene mutation that's also highly indicated in ADHD. So, drumroll please, it is the COMT gene mutation, also called the COMT gene mutation. On today's episode, I'm sharing with you all about the COMT gene mutation, what its role is in the body, signs and symptoms that you might have this gene mutation, and how you can support it naturally. I hope this episode opens your eyes and gives you a new way to see your ADHD and how you can support yourself naturally. Hey friend, welcome to the Better Belly podcast. If you're currently trying endless supplements, doctor visits, and diet changes to heal your mystery symptoms, you are in the right place. We're here to solve the real root causes behind your gut, hormone, skin, sleep, and brain concerns. Literally anything and everything in your body. My name is Allison Jordan. I'm a functional medicine practitioner that has supported over 150 clients just like you to heal problems that no one has been able to fix. You don't need a perfect diet or a random supplement you found on Instagram to heal. You need a proven system that heals your whole body from the inside out. That's what I'm here to share with you, episode by episode. It's time to make health easy again. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. Before I get into today's episode, if you want to go and check out the first episode I did on another gene mutation that can affect or be highly indicated in ADHD, you can go check out episode 214, which is this gene mutation making your ADHD worse? Why the MAOA gene mutation matters if you have ADHD. But today we're going to be talking about the COMT gene. And in both the episode 214 and today's episode where I'm talking about these gene mutations, I also just want to give a big shout out to Dr. Ben Lynch, who wrote a book called Dirty Genes, where a lot of this information, where I'm giving like lists and direct definitions or explanations of genes, it's coming from his book. I'll try to mention throughout the podcast episode as much as possible if it came from his book, but just know that some of the deep details I want you guys to know is grounded in people and someone who is a gene expert, who has studied genes, worked on the human genome, teaches people across the world on DNA and genomics. So just to know that this information is super grounded. And then on top of what I share that is from his book or his training, I'm also going to be giving you additional information and thoughts and pieces on how I'm actually practically helping clients who may or may not have these gene mutations, and give me just some practical tidbits on things to actually do. All right. So the primary function of the COMT gene is to help you metabolize estrogen, something called catechols that come in food and drink, and also process the stress neurotransmitters dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. This is honestly very similar to MAOA. They just are helping with processing these neurotransmitters differently, but they are both the MAOA and COMT gene are affecting neurotransmitters specifically. Same with the COMT gene, you're going to have a fast version and a slow version. So a slow COMT gene means that you're going to more slowly process or metabolize estrogen, process catechols from food and drink, and process the neurotransmitters in your body. What this is going to look like, focusing on the neurotransmitter component of things, is that if you process them slowly, they build up and you can actually end up having too much or an excess. And so people who tend to have a slow COMT gene, they can be stimulated with a very little amount of stimulation. They can be workaholics because they're getting just enough dopamine from the work that it actually feels super fulfilling, versus somebody who has a fast COMT gene, they might get a little bit of a dopamine hit from work, but because they are burning through, they're essentially metabolizing their neurotransmitters faster. They're getting rid of them, and they are craving new dopamine fixes. And that is actually where the ADHD symptomology is going to come from, is actually having the fast COMT gene mutation. So most of this episode, pretty much all of it from here on out, I'm going to be talking about symptoms and ways to support the fast COMT gene mutation, because again, you're going to have this, if you have the COMT gene mutation, it's either fast or slow. You're not like both or anything like that. All right. So the way that Dr. Ben Lynch describes how a fast COMT gene mutation affects you is that you clear catechols, estrogen, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine from your system too efficiently, and as a result, they leave your system sooner than they should, with a variety of physical and psychological effects, which I'm going to list some of them here. Listen, are some of these symptoms what you've been dealing with? Do you have an excessive sense of calm? Because that would be like stress hormones. You're literally processing out super fast, so you don't get ruffled as easily. You can have a lack of sleep difficulties, effective stress response, a lot of pain tolerance, but you're also going to have difficulty completing tasks, difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, lack of confidence or optimism, low energy, and a reliance on things like caffeine, chocolate, or green tea, because those things are going to both stimulate you, give you a dopamine hit, and give you some of those energy that you're not naturally getting from having just like sustained neurotransmitter levels. There's a potential strength of a COMT gene is going to be things like the ability to relax, acceptance of others, having a broad focus, calm, high tolerance for stress, restful sleep, and a wide range of interests. But the fast COMT gene comes with other things, that there's the conditions that can be associated with this gene mutation is going to be ADHD, in particular, the inattention, multitasking, and inability to focus. Some addictive disorders, whether that's like drug, alcohol, gambling, shopping, video games, depression, and potentially learning disabilities. Again, you might not have all of those things, but just saying that that can come with this thing where you're literally just processing out your neurotransmitters too fast. They're not staying in your brain long enough to give you the feel goods. So your body's craving things. And that's where like you can be more prone to an addiction to get your next hit, essentially. This is a really nice list of what Dr. Ben Lynch calls the portrait of a fast COMT. So they are I statements where you can listen and see if you identify with them. So yeah, he's written, I have a difficult time paying attention. I'm a poster child for ADHD. I tend to go with the flow. I'm not a workaholic. When I get stressed, I recover quickly and move on. I fall asleep quickly. Where's my cup of coffee? I need it. Eating a higher protein diet makes me feel great. I tend to be more depressed than enthusiastic and have been for years. I'm just not that excited about things. I don't get PMS. And the reason he says that is because one thing I haven't stressed a ton is that COMT gene also helps process estrogen. So PMS typically is going to be caused by too much estrogen, but if you process your estrogen faster than normal, you actually might have too little estrogen, or at least not too much, and so you're less likely to have that PMS. You have or had light menses, menstruation. You are very tolerant of pain compared to others. You do better with central nervous system stimulation medications like Ritalin, Adderall, Vyvanse, and Focalin. You do worse with medications like Intuniv. And this is great because he's giving stuff from like a doctor's perspective. He understands the details of why those medications and why not. Also, I struggle with attention and focus. I often lack motivation, and I feel an initial happy rush after eating lots of carbs and starchy foods, because it's going to give you that dopamine hit, but you're going to have feelings of depression return quite quickly. And that is because that dopamine hit just depletes so quickly. And then you're also going to be followed with a blood sugar crash, which is going to make you feel even worse. So if this is like even a little bit sounds like you, your next question is likely, so what do I do about it? The great news is that when you have a gene mutation, and I wish I said this a little earlier. I did say this in the MAOA gene mutation. One of the first things I said is that this is not decisive of what the rest of your life has to look like. I think sometimes when we talk about gene mutations, MTHFR is a really common one for people to talk about. We think this just defines the rest of my life and I'm stuck this way. That is not the case. Yes, that gene mutation might be there, but you can actually make it act fairly normal by one, removing irritants that make that gene basically overburden the gene and make it function even less well than it currently is. And you can add things to that gene or add things to your lifestyle that reduces tension on that gene. So again, you're kind of meeting your genetic makeup with its ability to cope, and then your symptomology can significantly reduce to the point where there's just not as much irritation and symptoms due to the COMT gene. So when I'm working with clients, I'm not usually thinking, or I don't do testing for, do you have the COMT gene mutation or not? There's a lot of other things that get into this, like something called epigenetics, which essentially means, is that gene even turned on? Even if you have a gene mutation, it doesn't mean it's active in your body. And you can sometimes not have a gene mutation, but your body can mimic a gene mutation being present if you have certain nutrient deficiencies or toxins present. Because say you have a normal functioning MTHFR, if you have enough other toxins or nutrient deficiencies that's affecting your methylation cycle, like not enough B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, whatever it is, then you can literally still get the symptoms of an MTHFR gene mutation without even having it. I know, pretty crazy. But the really cool thing is that you don't have to get super microscopic, like, do I have this gene mutation at all? I don't even do testing for my clients. I just like to have that awareness piece. But what you can do is say, when I get rid of the toxins in my body and then I add in the nutrients my body needs to do things like methylate properly, this gene works better. And that's what I'm seeing will happen to my clients who have ADHD. They'll say, is the work that we are doing, is it designed to help people with ADHD? I feel like I focus better. I feel like my mood swings aren't as strong. I feel like my irritability is down. I feel all their just the management of their ADHD is less. Doesn't mean it's not there or they're like cured of it. And I say, it's like not designed just for your ADHD. It's designed for every cell in your body. And we just happen to have affected some component of your body that was making your ADHD more intense or more difficult to manage. So this list might sound a little similar to the MAOA gene mutation too. So if you listen to that episode, just like re-listen to this, see what stands out to you. What have you not worked on before? What intrigues you? The amazing thing is that I'm finding that the same set of lists of things can help so many different things. And it's usually the items in the list that you're avoiding or you're afraid of, or sometimes it's the items in the list that you're too focused on to the detriment of even paying attention to any other items in the list that's causing problems. So the first thing that I have in my list here to support your COMT gene functioning is reduce toxins. Toxins bleed your body of nutrients. They add a lot of inflammation and they can upregulate that gene dysfunctionality. One way that you can reduce toxins is by not eating foods you're sensitive to. And I like to say, don't assume you don't have a sensitivity if you don't have a gut symptom like, oh, I eat wheat, but my tummy never hurts when I eat wheat. Yeah, but do you have fatigue? Do you feel like you need a 2:00 nap? Do you need 3 cups of coffee every day? Do you blow up at your children? Do you have diarrhea is a GI symptom. You can have the most common symptom for wheat sensitivity is not gut or GI. It is neurological, right? So the testing we do in my program is called the Zoomer test. It does both permanent food sensitivity tests through protein peptides and temporary food sensitivity testing, which is the IgG-IgA. The downside with the temporary food testing is that type of testing, it will change. So if you've done 2 or 3 types of IgG, IgA testing for food sensitivities over the years, your test will be different. A lot of my clients find it super confusing. Why was my test different this time? Because it changes. And I get into that in other episodes in the Blueprint course and program. I teach a little bit more in depth on it, but the big picture is that it's helpful to know what you are currently sensitive to, but that will change and you can actually reduce those temporary food sensitivities. And then you want to know your permanent ones. And the Zoomer test is the only test I know of that even does that. So the next thing is you want to reduce chronic physical or emotional stress. This is things like sleep deprivation. If you are a parent and you have a kid who keeps waking up in the middle of the night, I'm not talking about like a 3-month-old. I'm talking like a 5-year-old. You want to work with a sleep consultant to help them sleep through the night. I once had a client who, when we did a big intake of her health and we did a bunch of lab testing to see what was going on in her, and what plan we wanted to put together using the gut healer system that I have in the Better Belly Blueprint. As I was creating it for her, she was telling me that her daughter's waking her up 2 to 3 times a night to go to the bathroom and then have her put back to bed. And I said, until you're able to sleep through the night, this is very controllable. If you're not able to sleep through the night, a lot of everything else we do will not be that effective. She could have spent thousands of dollars on supplements and done all the diet changes and, followed everything to a T. But if she wasn't going to sleep through the night, that can often limit the progress of your health. You also can look at sleep quality for yourself by seeing, are you potentially a mouth breather? And I highly recommend going and finding an orofacial myofunctional therapist to see, do you have any dysfunction in your mouth, the way your tongue works, the way your jaw works, where you are potentially opening your mouth at night to breathe? Maybe your sinuses are congested. If you have snoring, if you have apnea, if you have TMJ, if you have teeth grinding, if you have chronic neck pain, chronic shoulder pain, if your lips are dry in the morning, if you have a lot of oral thrush or oral white coating on the tongue, acid reflux, these can all be signs of mouth breathing at night. The other thing with sleep is that because the COMT gene processes and metabolizes things faster, a lot of times eating some protein before bed might be able to help keep your blood sugar more consistent throughout the night, and give you some of that protein and like long-term energy. So I definitely recommend things like eating peanut butter, eggs, nuts, cheese. If you're dairy-free, I have a whole episode 171 on all the dairy-free hacks that I have of like eating real cheese, etc., that you can do safely. So go check out that episode. Other things that might cause physical stress would be being too sedentary or overworking out, HIIT exercises when your body really needs more restorative movement that's slower, less intense, and then emotional stress. And I get it. I'm not saying no one's ever going to be stressed. But if you have a loss of a loved one, maybe that's everything from a pet to a parent to a friend, loneliness, isolation, grief, these can also be additional factors. And it's just great to like have self-compassion and get counseling, talk to a friend, get involved in a church or a spiritual community to get support. Other things that are going to be super helpful for the COMT gene mutation is balancing blood sugar. A huge component of this is eating protein. Protein literally gives you the basis of neurotransmitters, which is amino acids. And so in episode 212, which is called the ADHD gut connections, I give 5 ways to make ADHD management easier by healing your gut. And one of those ways, I do a deep dive into protein and how it impacts ADHD. I would highly recommend go check out that episode. You can click a link in the show notes where I'm going to have it, but you can go listen to that more in-depth understanding on how much protein can impact ADHD and also some mistakes to avoid when you are aiming to eat more protein. But in general, a lot of times what I'm seeing is that clients say, I am eating protein and fat and carbs, and I'm eating regular meals, and I'm still having a lot of, maybe your blood sugar is still really high when you get it checked at the doctor, or you don't feel good, or you feel worse after eating, or you don't feel energized after eating. If you're dealing with any of these problems, you could also be dealing with things like H. pylori, which is a pathogen that lowers stomach acid. And when you have low stomach acid, you don't break down protein, you don't break down fat as well. If you have any liver congestion going on, you're not going to produce bile as well. And I talk a lot more about this in episode 212, the ADHD gut connection. And everything that I'm mentioning right now is stuff that we work on in the Better Belly Blueprint. We work to heal your liver so you can produce bile and break down protein and make sure, do you have H. pylori or not, and heal your stomach acid in a safe way. Because please, please, please do not go and just take hydrochloric acid without having a plan and knowing what you're doing, because you could really still hurt your gut lining if you take it without proper planning in and around it. If you have any type of pathogen in your body, whether that's bacterial overgrowth or candida overgrowth or mold toxicity, which I'm going to get more into in 2 days on the next episode, all these things are going to make the eating that you do seem less effective. So please don't beat yourself up too much. That's the only reason I'm mentioning this, is that sometimes I get clients who are like, I feel like I eat perfect. I eat clean. I eat organic. I eat regular meals. I eat protein, fat, and carbs. And it feels like I still can't lose weight. My mood's still not good. My energy's not good. My skin's not good. If that's all true, then you really, really, really want to look more deeply into some hidden causes of inflammation. And that's where we get into biochemical stresses. This is hidden pathogens like parasites, C. diff, H. pylori. For ADHD specifically, I love talking about C. diff, and you can go hear more on it on episode 41 called Anxiety, Depression, or ADHD, One Reason to Check Your Gut. I have the link in the show notes. And some pathogens will specifically inhibit even further neurotransmitter conversion and balance in the body, which just throws off everything in the brain: mood, focus, attention, all the things that tend to be kind of off and wonky and difficult in ADHD. You can have heavy metals, mold toxicity, leaky gut due to eating food sensitivities, due to having pathogens, due to having toxins. And the chronic biochemical stress, I find, is what is not being addressed in most healing practices. If you go tell your doctor, I'm feeling anxious, I can't focus, they'll get you, an ADHD diagnosis, they'll get you medication, they'll get you a counselor, they will, tell you to walk, get sunlight, eat protein. They might tell you a lot of these things, but if you do all those things and you're still not feeling your sunshiny best, there's a big likelihood that you're dealing with hidden toxins that doctors will not and cannot look for. They literally don't have the testing to see these things. And this has been a big problem that a lot of my clients come to me and say, I already did testing for H. pylori. I already did testing for parasites or C. diff or heavy metals, and it didn't show up. And then we do the testing with our functional medicine testing, and it gets better. OMG, so good. If you want this and you want to learn more about how I help my clients do this, go to betterbellytherapies.com/training, and it will take you to a video that's shorter than your favorite TV show and show you exactly how the Better Belly Blueprint works. So you can get your own lab testing at a fraction of the cost as you normally would. You can create your own personalized health plan or have me do it for you, and finally get relief from these hidden symptoms that have just felt like something's wrong in your body this whole time. So highly recommend that. Then the last thing that's super great in general, you don't need testing for this, but the COMT gene mutation is super impacted by the methylation cycle. And this is things like MTHFR. If you are nutrient deficient in the following minerals and vitamins, then you can actually have a disruption in your methylation cycle, even with no other gene mutations happening. And that can actually cause your COMT gene to do what Dr. Ben Lynch says, act dirty. It will act like it has a gene mutation, even though it doesn't. So some specific minerals to keep an eye on is B2, B9, which is folate, B12, protein, which again, protein has to do with the whole amino acid thing, and that gets us back to make sure your stomach acid is good. You can actually do a super simple test that I recommend called the baking soda test by going to betterbellytherapies.com/constipation or clicking the link in the show notes for my constipation PDF. And on page 4, I have instructions on how to do the baking soda test. And you can just get a bird's eye view on if you have low stomach acid or not. But if you do have low stomach acid, if you eat 100 grams of protein a day, you're not going to be able to digest it, and you'll still have the symptoms of low protein. But B2, B9, B12, protein, and the last one is magnesium, which in Dr. Ben Lynch's book, he really stresses and he highlights some things that common reasons for low magnesium include caffeine intake and long-term use of PPIs. So it kind of makes sense if you've got this fast COMT gene and you are burning through neurotransmitters that actually help you stay alert and energized, you're going to be taking more caffeine to try and it doesn't help your neurotransmitters, but it will force cortisol to come out. And that's another way that we can get energy. But caffeine intake will also deplete you in magnesium, which can get you in this crazy cycle of taking caffeine for energy, lower magnesium, not methylating well, COMT gene working even less well, having even less energy, now needing even more caffeine. Pretty crazy. And then long-term use of PPIs. If you have been on PPIs for acid reflux, especially if it's been a long time, no one is asking, why do you have acid reflux? And that is what my program, the Better Belly Blueprint, does. We are 3 things we specialize in is bloating, constipation, and acid reflux. And then we've also had clients come through and have diarrhea that goes away, eczema that goes away, and a lot of autoimmune conditions that go into remission. So rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, what else? Endometriosis. We've had so many autoimmune conditions that just get super quiet when you get rid of the hidden sources of toxins that doctors cannot find and will not look for. So that is it for today. As a reminder or summary of some of the resources that I shared today, I give a bunch of podcast episodes that you can check out and go to the links in the show note if you missed any of them. I shared the book Dirty Genes by Dr. Ben Lynch, which I think is a phenomenal book to listen to or read, whichever one you prefer. I shared my training video on how the Better Belly Blueprint works, and I have a link in the show notes so that you can heal your gut so that your ADHD is just easier to manage, right? I'm not saying got the miracle pill, you won't have it anymore, but it can get so much easier to manage. And you can also go and get my free constipation relief guide by going to betterbellytherapies.com/constipation or clicking the link in the show notes to get that baking soda test so you can see, do you potentially have low stomach acid that might be causing a low protein problem that would then be affecting not just your neurotransmitters, but your weight, your cravings, your ability to build muscle mass, your metabolism. So super juicy. Go check out all those resources and be sure to subscribe because in 2 days, I'm going to be talking about our last subject on the ADHD series, which is the ADHD and mold connection. It's going to be a rad time. I'm so excited to finally bring this and just reveal some things that are not being talked about in the ADHD community that I'm hearing, and give you some hope and some practical things again to just make your life feel a little easier and really just take off some of that, bring in self-compassion and take off some of that guilt and shame that is so easy to walk around with when it feels like you're not functioning the way you want to. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you in 2 days. Hey friend, I hope you loved this episode. If you've been a fan for a while or newly loving this podcast, can you do me a favor? Drop into Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. When you leave a review, you do so much. You help me know you're listening. You can tell me what you're loving so I know what to make more of. And you help others by boosting this podcast so other people like you can find the podcast too. I mean, it's a win-win-win, right? So if you want a way to pay it forward, just go to Apple Podcasts or click the link in my show notes and leave a rating and review. And if you want some more free stuff, just head over to my free Facebook group, betterbellytherapies.com/Facebook, and you can get access to all of my free support for you, including some Facebook group exclusive stuff like my podcast episode vault, where you can search the Better Belly podcast by topic and find exactly what you need to expedite your healing. I cannot wait to see you in there. Catch you guys next week.